This is Off Planet Radio.
I'm Randy Maugans. This is Off Planet Radio, and it is Sunday, July 29th, 2012, and I am on the line from the UK with Sarah Stanga. And also on the line with me is Miranda Kelly, who requires no introduction to the listeners/readers of my website. And we've brought Sarah on after so many times we've tried to get something together, and the last time being, of course, the infamous Sacramento fiasco, which I didn't get to, and which Sarah was sadly hijacked in the process of flying into the U.S. So this interview today is going to kind of remediate a lot of the gaps and things that have been going on in the background. And Sarah, of course, has done interviews on the Bases website in the UK. And so, Sarah, maybe what we do here is just go into a little bit of your background, and we'll take it up from there.
Okay. My background, it's hard to know where to start, really. I'm MK Ultra. I'm a MILABS. As far as I'm aware, I've been born into a particular bloodline in a family that links into various Freemasonic groups. There's military history there in the family as well. I've basically been used in a lot of mind control, torture experiments, satanic ritual abuse. And I don't know what programs I've been used in, but I do know from my memories that there are various programs that I've been involved in, and the underground military bases, and also alien abduction over the years.
That's pretty succinct, actually, and it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Your involvement began, I guess, in childhood, or maybe, as I've come to understand it, even pre-birth. How far back do you trace your roots in terms of an actual involvement?
I know that they saw me coming before I was born. Basically, they completely saw me coming before I was born. They even knew what soul group I would be linked to, my previous lives, everything. I'm pretty sure that even my mother and my father coming together was orchestrated in one way or another for the particular genetics that they hold. My mother's family background have a Babylonian bloodline and Celtic Irish as well as Celtic English. And then there's the background from my father's side, which is Germanic and Latvian, which the Latvians do consider themselves to be one of the Aryan bloodlines, an Aryan group.
Correct.
So, yeah, they basically decided that they were going to make sure that I was going to be a premature baby, and we all know that premature babies are born with a heightened nervous system, which is really great for them in terms of mind control and trauma.
You said heightened mind. Did you say heightened nervous system?
Yeah, most premature babies, when they're born, they're because their body is actually still developing whilst out of the womb, the nervous system tends to be more sensitive in premature babies, which makes various forms of mind control and also psychic training easier to a certain level. And they basically decided that I would be born on the 16th of December, and they planned this very meticulously. My natal chart is pretty much 85% fire in its element. Born in the year.
I'm losing your signal, so I pretty much lost everything up to your natal chart. I don't know.
All right, okay.
Yeah, let's go back to natal chart again. I'm sorry, there's something in the Skype that was kind of blurring your statement about your natal chart, your time of birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my time of birth is the 16th of December, and my natal chart is comprised of 85% fire in its element, and I'm also born in the Chinese zodiac, the year of the dragon, the year of the fire dragon, so there's a lot of fire there, and it's also the third feast date of the goddess Sophia, the Gnostic goddess. Mm-hmm. It's the date of the Celtic goddess Morrigan, and it's also the date of the spider goddess. And all those three goddess archetypes have been being used very, very heavily in me in terms of archetypes and programming and magic ritual over the years. So the only other way to explain it is that Aleister Crowley put down in one of his books on Salamur, I can't remember which one, but he basically said all we are is a list of correspondences as a person, and that's literally what they do. They go into your natal chart, they find your personal correspondences, whether it be by numerology, colour, god, goddess archetypes, and you're used as a magical tool and trained, or I was anyway, by your natal chart for whatever they want to use you for in these programs. So
when did you first become consciously aware that you were part of something, I guess we would say, nefarious?
I was about 23 years old. Hello, are you still there? Hello?
I'm still here.
Okay. I was 23 years old. I was living in London at the time with my ex-partner, who I later on found out was a handler. And just some very, very bizarre things were going on in my life at that time. I started suffering from what is known as gang stalking, but I had no vocabulary for it at that time. I didn't understand what it was. And basically my friends and family made out that I was just crazy. There was a lot of gaslighting going on there. And there were just some very, very weird and bizarre paranormal experiences, especially whenever we went over to Germany to visit friends and family over in Germany. There was just some very, very crazy things that occurred over there, very, very odd, peculiar experiences. It was the first time that I had an encounter with a shadow being, otherwise known as a jinn, and I just knew that that there was something going on to do with the goddess Lilith. I knew I was being watched all the time, or remote viewed. There was a lot of black helicopters that were going over my home back in London, and also when we were staying over with friends and family over in Germany. Mm-hmm. And I knew something was going on. I knew I was under some kind of psychic surveillance and attack, but I couldn't get anybody to believe me, and everybody just went along playing the mental health game, basically, that, you're just suffering from depression. But no, there was a lot of very, very strange, very, very, very weird stuff going on, a lot of missing time that started happening as well, although that had been going on and off anyway over the years. But that's when I started to realise there was something really peculiar going on, was when I was 23 years old.
So looking back now, excuse me, based on what you were beginning to unravel at 23, were there gaps in your background, in your history? Are there missing pieces to your past that are not explainable by any normal explanation?
Yeah, there's just odd little kind of coincidences, really. As a child, I was taken weekly to a local clinic in the town that where I was born and grew up, and I remember it's very, very sketchy and hazy, actually, what happened. I know that I used to go there every week, and I used to have my height measured and my blood pressure taken, and they would measure the acuities in my eyes, and, you know, they'd ask me how I was getting on at school, and then they would always send us home with this small bottle of what my mother was told and I was told were vitamin drops. And that's one of the things, and I've had memories that have come back from that like hidden memories where basically there was a lot more going on than just visiting this woman every week. I would get taken on a lot of fishing trips by my stepfather during school holidays and at weekends and what have you. I used to really enjoy fishing as a child and just going out and wandering around the countryside. But if you ask me where we went fishing, I couldn't tell you. I really, really couldn't tell you. But we used to go fishing like almost all the time. There's lots and lots of missing time and missing memories there, a heck of a lot. And that's as quite a young child, from about the age of 7 onwards. Just very, very odd and peculiar things that were said by family members as well over the years to do with various things. I don't know. It's kind of bizarre to know where to start with that. You know, there's just
right. So you tend to believe that those fishing excursions were probably pretexts for other things that were going on in the background of your upbringing.
Oh, definitely. You know, I have memories of going to a particular place in Leicestershire known as Bowmanor Hall. We used to go there for some kind of like Christmas and craft fairs every so often that my mum used to want to go to. And I do remember that there was a conversation that my mother had with a woman there who turned around to her and pointed at me and said, "You know how special she is, don't you? Make sure that you do take care of her." I would be taken home and they were just like little things, like my mother was very, very much into kind of almost kind of new agey kind of occult stuff at that time as well. She had a few kind of occult books and things lying around, which she'd completely deny now, but were definitely there at the time. And she would get me to do various visualizations and meditations and things.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. I thought that was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of the local pagan lore as well, to do with Leicestershire, the local gods and goddesses and kind of sacred sites in the area as well. I got given a lot of that. The only other things that really, really stand out to mind was I do remember seeing shadow people a lot out to the corner of my eye, kind of like floating around the house as a child.
Did you? Yeah, go ahead. Please.
And I have memories. And I have memories of, you know, my mother turning around to me over breakfast one morning and saying, "Oh, you know, there's an owl that's coming to my bedroom window every night. Have you seen it? Have you seen it?" And I remember saying to her, No, I haven't seen anything." And then she would sit there going, "Oh, well, you know, I was staring out the window last night and I was looking, you know, in the sky, and I think I saw what's called a flying saucer. You know, did you see any stars that were moving in the sky?" And I just remember turning around to her and saying no. But one of the other things that I do remember very clearly from childhood was I would wake up in the middle of the night absolutely petrified, really, really scared. And all that would be going through my mind is that if I'm really, really quiet and if I make my breathing really, really shallow, they won't hear me, they won't see me, and they'll leave me alone. And I would literally be petrified, kind of like frozen, stiff in bed. I do remember at one point being called to go to my window. And I do remember seeing something at the window, an owl or a face, and looking at the window, and there's a bright light in the field behind my family home. I actually went through some therapy on that particular memory last year, and it came out that was an alien abduction. I was taken out of my bed as a child, and I went into this craft that was behind my mother's home, basically. Mm-hmm. It was out in the field. Like behind my mother's home. It was a military grey abduction. So there's things like that. And if I was to ask my family about it now, they would, if I went and spoke to my mother about it now, she'd completely deny it. She'd say that she was delusional or making things up, or she had an overactive imagination. But there were a lot of
yeah, that's a famous one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead anyway.
No, I didn't want to interrupt your narration on that. One of the things I wanted to ask you was your awareness of developed psychic skills.
Yeah. There are quite a few strange incidents to do with that. I was naturally drawn to kind of sitting down by and speaking with trees and with elves and with fairies and pixies as a young child. And I used to tell my mum about the fairies and the angels and what have you all the time. And I just it was always passed off as an overactive childhood imagination, basically. But there was definitely a lot of spirit contact. I mean, I remember my ancestors, I'd have my great-grandparents coming and sitting on my bed, as a child. And, these are people that have passed over. They've gone to the night, and they would be sitting there on my bed, and they'd be telling me bedtime stories. And there were other incidents as well, which I now know were interdimensional and to do with ETs, where I remember basically being told, being given a basic draft of potentially what I was here to do in this life when I was about 5 years old, and getting really, really angry with God, really, really pissed off about it, and saying, I can't believe that I'm supposed to live such a shit life, basically. Excuse my language.
No problem.
Getting really, really pissed off and basically shouting at God about it. 5 years old. And the next thing I know, there's this, I kind of go into a trance, and there's like a vortex that opens up in my bedroom wall. And the next thing I know, I'm standing there in front of this, what I now know to be reptilian hooded being inside what looks like a cave somewhere. And it feels very, very physical. I can feel the pebbles on the floor underneath my feet in this cave, and they're slightly damp. And I can see the cave walls around me, and this reptilian being saying, you will live this life, and you have to live this life. You don't actually have any choice in it. So just little, really bizarre incidents like that, really. Seeing dead people and what have you, and being teased and tormented for it at school, because I used to see the dead caretaker hanging around, kind of like sneering at all the children and that sort of thing, which made life pretty hell, actually. As a kid, it made life pretty bad.
So that's what I was going to ask you next, actually. If you sensed or knew that there was the presence of people other than your immediate family who you would probably see now as being a presence, or being handlers, or being people who were training you in some respect?
Yeah. There was definitely remote viewers who were also kind of handling me or training me as well. I remember being made to feel very sexually aware about myself as a young child. If I wandered around my bedroom naked, I remember there would be this man with short blonde hair and glasses who wasn't quite, he wasn't physical. He was definitely astral or remote viewing. And he would basically sit there teasing me and mocking me and, saying, oh, you're kind of like flashing your body there. That's not something that a young lady should be doing. And there were things like that went on quite a lot. And there was also, childhood sexual abuse that was going on as well, and physical and emotional abuse that was going on in the home also. So
I know that's difficult to talk about, but it's a component that I guess would go into what, here in the U.S. and probably even in the U.K. we would call monarch training. Were you aware that you were being initiated into anything that would be like a ritualistic type of sexuality?
Not as a child, no. I don't think I was aware of it as a child, but as an adult, I've definitely become a lot more aware of that. Yeah, there was some alongside the paedophilia and the fact that various things that were talked to me about, you know, by my parents and even my grandparents, that, you know, there are things that you just don't talk to a child about until it's appropriate, until it's ready and it's time, and you know that they can emotionally and socially and psychologically understand what you're talking about and how or why. And there are things that were definitely very, very inappropriate that I was told about as a child. I mean, I was basically, you know, groomed into having, you know, sexual relations with my stepfather, definitely. And I know that there were, you know, this. It was even going on before I was born inside the womb, you know, that due to things that I know that my mother experienced while she was pregnant with me. And it's well known that whatever affects the mother affects the child, you know. So there was kind of programming going on. There was programming going on in that regard as well, definitely. And also straight out of the womb as well. There was a lot of abuse that I suffered off my father, which I know was quite sexual in nature. And one of the very earliest forms of programming that I actually received was as a baby. You know, they would basically, if I cried because I was hungry or because I wanted affection or because I needed my diaper changing, they would basically, you know, my father would just pick me up and you know, shout at me, or he would put my head under a running tap of water. Right. Yeah. You know, to stop me screaming, and this is, you know, that kind of programming teaches you to stop asking for help, basically. You know, and to make you completely submissive and quiet, and it also brings on a sense of almost over affection as well when you are given help and when you are given gifts and when you are then given love by your parents. You kind of, you know, because it's such a rarity, you cling to it. So they you know, it literally started from being a baby on that level.
Were there, to your recollection now, any instances of deep isolation where you were basically separated off, left in rooms by yourself, and allowed to basically be in a sense of isolation as a child?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember on one occasion I had a fight with one of my younger brothers, and it was just a kid's play fight, you know. It was just I think we were playing with some kittens and we'd been playing with some toys, and I'd been the mean sister, and I think I nicked a few Smarties off my brother, a few kind of like sweets of him, and we'd had a bit of a fight, and the punishment that I received was just completely disproportionate. You know, I was sent to my room without dinner, without TV, without food, and basically told that I couldn't come down until dinner time the following day. And then later on in the evening, you know, my stepfather comes up and he literally has the dog lead that he used to take the dog out, and it's got a chain on it, and he's basically bent me over my bed, and he's basically threatening to whip me and beat me. But if I accept the whipping and the beating with this chain on the dog lead, then I'll be allowed back down with the rest of the family to have dinner and what have you. But you know, there were incidents of being locked away in cupboards as well, that sort of thing. Definitely treated very differently to myself, a lot. Treated very, very differently. You know, made to feel like the outsider a lot. I have, you know, memories of being taken to.
Our Skype's cutting out again,
and
sir.
There's some strange. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I know. This makes it so difficult. That's okay. Just go ahead and continue.
Okay. Yeah, I was locked in this cell-like room in a facility somewhere. I don't know how long it was for, and it was just a bare room. There was nothing in it. I don't think I was given much in the way of food. There were some strange kind of symbols or markings on the floor. And you know, that I was supposed to look at and possibly reflect upon, that was supposed to affect my subconscious some way or another. And I would be kept somewhere like that for a few days at a time, basically. You know, I have memories of basically having my own fecal matter put around my mouth. I know that if I vomited, especially as a very young child, I would be made to eat my own vomit, that sort of thing. Kept in isolation and basically pretty much abused. Told to stop crying. If you carry on crying, then you're being a bad girl. Good girls don't cry. So learning to emotionally detach from a situation, Sorry, I don't know how else to go on and describe it, but yeah, a lot of pretty bad stuff.
So these symbols that were on the floor in this isolation cell, do you have memories of them now?
Yeah, actually, I drew a few of them down recently. They're pretty peculiar looking. I've gone crawling all over the internet to find something that looks similar to this particular symbol that I have a very clear memory of, and I've not found it anywhere. So I think it was just something that they drew down as some kind of archetypal imprint pattern for me, and for my memory to associate with that trauma and that isolation that I was going through.
Yeah, that's actually a very common pattern as well, is to use unique symbols which become embeds for later triggering for patterns, behavior patterns, or to take you into a dissociative state.
Yeah.
You had siblings. Do you have the sense that the siblings were also part of this, or were they? Because you have a stepfather, so obviously you possibly had siblings from two different parental lines as well.
Mm-hmm. I get the feeling that yes, there's at least two siblings out of the 5 of us that were born by my mother that I'm pretty sure have gone through some kind of trauma or mind control personally. That's my personal belief. I can't necessarily prove it, but that is definitely my sincere and personal belief, yes.
Okay.
And I know that my stepfather was one of the children that was involved in a very famous paedophile case to do with an area known as South Kesterburn in Lincolnshire, and he was one of the children that was a part of a farming community, a small group of villages, and so I know that he was abused and traumatized as a child as well. And from what I've heard over the years, South Kesterburn is actually quite a famous case with social workers when it comes to understanding paedophilia and organised paedophile rings and that kind of thing. So I know that he went through it as well. So it's kind of it's generational, basically, through both my mother's side of the family, my stepfather's, and to some extent on my father's side as well. It's kind of been multi-generational. These patterns of abuse, they kind of literally run in the family. It's seen as to some extent, I suppose, quite acceptable.
What you just discussed there, I think, needs to be heard by everyone. But here in the United States right now, and especially where I live, which is in the southern part of the U.S. called Pennsylvania, we have a very famous case that's supposedly just been all concluded, which involved Penn State University and an assistant head coach there who was accused of victimizing, we think, at least 40 or more victims over possibly as long as 25 to 30 years, using a nonprofit foundation to funnel children through to what is believed to be a pedophile network. And here in the U.S., as I'm sure in the U.K. as well, the general public has no awareness of what all this is about. They don't understand, or they don't choose to understand the depths of what this is all about, that pedophilia is really how the elites do what I call business in terms of rituals and in terms of their own internal power structures. And I don't know if you want to address any of that or not, in terms of how it impacts the power structure, the elites. You don't have to go into details that you don't wish to. I'm just kind of looking for you to give me a general thread on that thought pattern.
I know from my own personal experience and memories, I would definitely agree that it's some kind of
well, that's interesting. The Skype's breaking up as we're trying to talk about this again.
Basically you are just kind of how can I'm trying to formulate my words so that they make some kind of coherent sense.
Yeah, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, if you just want to go past this, that's okay.
I might come back to that later.
Okay,
I just can't think of the way to formulate it right now in my head. I'm a bit befuddled on it. So
okay, no problem. I don't want to put you on the hot seat over that.
Yeah. And it's definitely the gateway into the rest of the stuff that they do.
Right.
Okay. Totally.
That's actually succinct enough for me, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing that I do want to add to that actually is that over the years there's been friends of mine who were involved in working with homeless prostitutes actually, and one of the statistics that they found on working with these women is that a lot of them come from troubled backgrounds where they suffered paedophilia in the home, and there is I'm not 100% up to date on some of the statistics on this and the research that's been done, but basically that it is well known where I come from that basically these women are deliberately groomed and trained almost from childhood to become street hookers, to become street prostitutes, street workers, and I know from my memories, from my adult memories, that these women are used in satanic rituals. I know they are. You know that prostitutes are always, you know, one of the girls that they go for. You know.
Right, and you just brought up an important point about that because it does go into satanic ritualism. And what my research has unearthed is basically that if you follow the lines closely enough, you will locate sex rings that eventually lead up to the ritualistic inner chambers of the elites. And that's been something that I've researched for about 15 years. And I've done it on street level at times, even in terms of following sex rings on the street level of prostitution, and especially with both young males and young females. And it's a common pattern that when you begin to talk to people, you discover that their backgrounds give you clues into the fact that they were basically programmed into a lifestyle that was part of elite ritual.
Yeah, definitely. It's well known. Some of the local councillors and MPs, and even one of the past Lord Mayors of Leicester, where I was born and bred, was well known for liking to cruise for these ladies, basically, and was known to have a reputation for it. And, the police completely turned a blind eye to it, completely and utterly turned a blind eye to all this stuff. And, I could probably get in a bit of trouble for saying any more, but I know who this is.
And I don't want you to do that, because we're just going to deal with the generalities.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, moving forward a little bit, you're 23, you're beginning to recover memories, you're now consciously aware of the things that are going on in your life. Tell me a little bit about what you understand about MILABS and the reptilian and ET abductions.
Okay, the MILABS are basically training and mind control programming facilities. Most of them are underground military bases. A lot of the abductions that I'm aware of were grey military abductions. So there would be Zeta there would be the Greys, but you would be taken by a Zeta craft to a military underground base. And basically, once my memories, once I was taken there as a very young child, and I also have memories of my mother being taken to one of these places with me as well. Basically, I would be placed on a table and examined. I know that I had implants put in me very, very young as a child, roughly about 3.5 to 4 years old. I had some of my first implants. And the ET involvement, I think, takes part on the side of kind of basically trying to be able to understand how to control the mind of a human being. Basically, there's that side of it, but there's also the genetics side of it as well. For whatever reason, they want to be able to use our genetics themselves, but they also want to be able to fiddle around with our genetics to kind of modify us in some way as well. The reptilian involvement in that, the Greys are completely, from my understanding, completely subservient to the reptiles. Reptiles are basically their overlords, and the reptiles are overseen by the winged serpents. And from my memories in particular, there's definitely something going on there where there's a series of from one memories there's been Syrian involvement in these bases as well, but a lot of it is to do with the control of the human mind and to do with genetic tests and experiments as well, and you know, the more psychic you are, the better, which is why, as everybody knows, they tend to go for particular bloodlines, for particular blood groups.
Do you have the sense that they have actively pursued hybridization programs? Have you ever been aware of the presence of hybrids in your particular space? No, I can't honestly say. Okay. I can't honestly say that I am aware of the hybrid programs. I'm aware that they're real and that they go on. Whether I've actually ever met a hybrid, I can't 100% say. I think over the years, with some of the telepathic ET and astral ET contacts that I've had, there may well have been some hybrids coming through that way. I can't say that I've ever met one physically or remember anything to do with the hybrids in particular from the programs. At this time, I just don't have any memories of that. If they are there, they've not come to the surface, so okay. I can't really say anything, to be honest. Do you have memories of being in the presence of ETs at the same time you were in the presence of what we would call normal human beings, potentially military types or scientific types?
Yeah, definitely. RAF Bentwaters is one of the places where I remember that happening, actually. I remember being taken into a base that's somewhere under RAF Bentwaters, and down there I remember a German doctor who turns up in a lot of my memories. He's always got most of the time he has a white overcoat on, looking normally doctorified with a little kind of like clipboard and doing various tests and investigations. And there were always Zeta Reticuli and reptiles in the background, definitely, sharing the same space. From what I could see in 3D, they weren't necessarily 4D at all. They were occupying the same physical space. So, yeah, I do have memories of that.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that as well, because different people that I interview have different memories and different perceptions of their experiences. Were the reptilians, do you believe, fully three-dimensional, or were they manifested, and did they seem to come from, let's say, a fourth or fifth dimensional aspect?
They do come from a different dimension completely. They're definitely come from, in my opinion, they come from 4D. They can, to a certain extent, physically manifest here. And the reason that I believe that they do that is because I can remember the texture of the skin, and I can actually remember the smell. They've got a particular kind of like, or smell that they give off, and it's rather pungent. And that was one of the most striking aspects of the memories of these beings to me as well, was the kind of remembering the texture of the skin and the smell as much as anything else. So, you know, I mean, that's my personal experience anyway. I can only go on what I remember, but as far as I'm aware, they are from another dimension. They're not from here. They're not 3D at all, but they can come in here should they wish to. They do have that technology somehow. So.
And your communication with these beings is, I would guess, non-verbal, in that it's probably highly telepathic.
Yeah, the majority of the communication is telepathic. I remember being told to, you know, sit down and sit still and be a good girl by Grays in a chair. And I remember trying to shout back at them, and I just remember feeling, you know, basically being told to sit still, be quiet, and literally being told off by them. And I literally remember, you know, just being a young child shouting back at them in my mind, going, "You can't do this to me, you fucking bastards, you piss off, leave me alone, get off me," you know, as a young child. So, yeah, the majority of the communication that takes place is telepathic.
The Greys themselves, do they seem to be almost emotionally void, not responding emotionally?
Yeah, they don't seem to have any concept of love or empathy at all whatsoever. But it's, at the same time, they're really, really bizarre because they care for their own species. They do have like a hive mind mentality, and they care very much for each other. But when it comes to human beings, they just seem to have absolutely no emotions or love or care or understanding, from my experience, at all. I've spoken to other abductees and contactees who have said that the Greys are wonderful. I have my own theories on that and why they have why they have their own positive experiences, which again I believe are to do with an understanding of magnetic impulses and how they affect brain waves, and you know they know the area of the mind that gives you the God consciousness and an enlightenment feeling and sensation, and they know the areas of the brain that mimic love as well. And I'm sure that they use that kind of technology on us. I'm sure that they do, to kind of make it seem like a love and light experience when really actually it's not. But most of my memories of the Greys are basically, they're very, very clinical. They're there just to get the job done, basically. They're a little bit fearful, if anything, you know, and they're set to time. They've got a particular time in which to get, you know, this particular job done that they're doing on you. You know, collect your eggs or hormones, or take a blood sample, or put an implant in, or whatever they need to do, and then basically get you back home and then on to the next person. So it's very clinical. So
they're almost like butlers for what we would call the Zetas, the Dracos, the Reptilians.
Yeah, definitely. They're the little workers. Mm-hmm. They're the little workers, pretty much.
Do you recall, and I'm again, when I interview, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm trying to nail down, without any great certainty, but just get little details, the color of Greys. I mean, a lot of people have said, well, they're Greys, but my experience and my background indicates that some of them are very different colors. There are white-colored Greys as well as blue ones. Your experience on that?
I would definitely concur with that, yeah. I mean, I remember ones that are beige, ones that are, you know, kind of like beigey brown colour. I remember ones that were grey. I remember ones that were slightly green in colour, ones that are slightly blue in colour, ones that are white. The white ones tend to be taller. they're the ones that tend to be taller than the rest. But yeah, there's definitely different coloured ones. Somebody asked me recently, you know, do I have any memories of the walnut brain greys? You know, a breed that apparently some people have been coming forward with and say have, you know, heads that look like walnuts, that looks like their brains are kind of like outside their skeleton and what have you. I personally don't, but you know, that's yet another breed of grey that people remember and people have seen. So yeah, there's definitely more than one.
Shifting to the opposite side of this, do you have memories of what we would call benevolent entities who possibly were there guiding you as what maybe we would call angelic types?
Yeah, I do. I have a memory of being about 4.5 years old and being on a, tied down to a table in a facility somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's an underground military facility again. And I've been undergoing some kind of torture and electroshock treatment. And they've pretty much finished what they're doing, and they've just left me there on my own, completely isolated in the room. There's nobody else there, and I'm crying. And I just remember this literally like an angelic presence that kept saying to me, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, we're here, we're looking after you, we're going to make sure that not too much harm comes to you, we're going to make sure that you're okay, try not to worry, you'll get out of this and you'll get through this. And I've had several memories where I've been taken into facilities and various places, and there's always been either a connection, I don't know if sometimes it's been my higher self, but definitely a guardian or benevolent presence that's been around, that's been trying to make contact, trying to say, don't worry, you're not alone, you're not alone, you're not alone, you'll get through this. Yeah, I do have memories of beings like that around, definitely.
And if you need to take a break at any point in any of this, just let me know, because I know this can be difficult and emotionally draining, and there's no schedule for getting through this. I don't even have questions written out. I'm just basically kind of bouncing off of you right now.
I'm okay for now. I'm okay for now.
Trying to think where I want to go with this in terms of I want you to cover the basics and won't linger too long on your past. I guess let's do it this way. Where are you today in terms of coming to grips with this, of trying to keep semblance of life and working on your own healing methods?
Where I am now, I suppose I'm in a stage of gathering, basically. After going through horrendous post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative identity disorder over a few years now, and trying to kind of assess what all these memories and flashbacks meant. And finding out the extent of some of the things that's gone on. I just feel like I'm in a phase of gathering, and trying to kind of center myself on what's happened. And I know one of the messages that I kept getting from my higher self was to ground within myself, as in ground within what this is and what's happened to me, not to reject it, but just to kind of accept that this has happened, and just kind of use that as an anchor, as a guide, as a excuse me, and as a kind of waypoint to kind of know where to go next. I feel that I'm still finding out a lot of stuff to do with my family background at the minute. In particular, any links to do with the Latvian side of my family, and the German side. So there's been some research that I've been doing there, and that just, for me, emotionally opened up a whole new can of worms.
Right.
But,
right. Yeah, I understand.
It's just a case of, I suppose, at the minute, just taking each day as it comes. That's all that I can really do at the minute, and just kind of working through the emotions and the memories, and just I don't know, just putting one foot in front of the other piece by piece and kind of coming into a place of acceptance with it as much as I can. And I have good days and bad days. I have days where I just, I'd like to get hold of some military guy from these places and ram his head into a wall, and then I have days where I'm just like, oh, it's okay, I can forgive and I feel okay with it now, and then a new memory or experience or flashback will come through, and then it's like a whole whirlwind of emotions again. So
right, and that's just the emotional stress of recovering memories and dealing with the emotional impact of that. And it sounds like, those two emotions riffing off of each other are just kind of your balancing act, because there's a sense that on one hand you want revenge, and on the other that's not really going to serve your purpose as well. It keeps entangling you into their matrix, which is basically hatred and fear. Definitely.
I come from a perspective of not denying your emotions at all, but just kind of paying some mindful observation to them and respect for them, basically, and just honouring them. So just kind of by observing them and kind of slightly detaching from them in that sense, it kind of makes it easier. And that's just come through a process of various meditation techniques that I kind of developed and also been trained in over the past 8-9 years now. And I think if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for help from certain members of the Buddhist community and certain other meditation groups and what have you that I've been to over the years, I think I would have been in a lot more trouble than I am. Basically, these meditation techniques in themselves are centering and grounding, basically, and they help you to work through things a lot more easily.
So in a sense, you kind of do have a little bit of a support structure there.
A little bit, yeah. There's people in the MK Ultra community as well that I correspond with by email as well. And that helps a lot, and an awful lot, actually. If you're having a bad day, there's always somebody to email, as I'm sure Miranda knows from my emails.
Miranda's been awfully quiet in the background there.
She has indeed.
I've just been listening. This is great.
You wrote something to me a little while back, and I want to read this, if I may.
Okay.
And it says, to me, this particular email that you sent me was really touching. It says, I don't want to detract at all from the atrocities of what has happened. It is wrong, heinous, and a spiritual disaster that has been allowed to occur. However, I believe that all people who have been through this are spiritual heroes of one kind or another. And I wish to be able to portray this in some fashion, sort of like standing up for my fellows in the spiritual battle. That's one of those, Sarah, this was one of those emails that was like, print it, frame it, file it away, read it often, and try and get this message out there, because what you've described in the first 50 minutes of this interview sets the base for, where I really want to go, and it's framed by that particular extract from the email.
I totally 100% meant that statement when I wrote it, and I still mean it now. Anyone, and I mean absolutely anybody who's been through any kind of mind control, MK Ultra, satanic ritual abuse, in my opinion, if these people have been through that, are spiritually aware, are walking a spiritual path, they are a true spiritual warrior and hero in my personal perspective. I am so honoured to have met some of the people that I know and their own stories and things that's happened to them, and the strength and the courage and the compassion and the empathy and the awareness that these people have spiritually is always absolutely astounding and humbling, very, very humbling. And I get really, really tired from time to time of seeing all this kind of stuff out there on the forums and on the internet, basically trying to brand and frame these people as insane, as lunatics, as idiots, as attention seekers. You know, if you've ever met somebody face to face who's been through any of this, who's been through MK Ultra, who's been a monarch, who's been a MILAB, and you listen to them and you see their face and their emotions and you feel their energies, there is absolutely no way that you could ever say that these people are liars at all. It's just wrong. And I think it's time for people to really start listening to what these people have been through. They say in the New Age community, you choose your life. And to a certain extent, I can accept that. You know, that you choose the life that you're born into and your parents and what have you. And all I can say is to choose to go through a life where you have to go through that. You know, you've got to be a strong person, surely. You've got to be a warrior of some kind to go through
exactly.
all of that.
That's such a huge statement.
You know, to still have faith in God or the goddess or divine creator or source or Buddha or Krishna or whoever you believe in, after going through something like that, takes courage in itself. Because one of the things that they repeatedly do to you again and again and again is to try and smash any sense of faith or belief or connection to God in you. That's one of the key points and elements of what they do in mind control. So for anybody to kind of go through that, you know, to everybody else out there who's been through MK Ultra, you know, I think that you're all astounding, basically, and just amazing individuals. And you know, we need people to kind of, as a result, to come out and speak about this more. To speak about it takes courage. You know, it took me a long while to come forward and speak about any of it. You know, it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage. You know, you get mocked at, you get taunted, you get teased, you have disinfo agents and COINTELPRO all over the internet. You know, people lose friends, they lose families. They can potentially lose their jobs over coming forward with stuff like this. It can be incredibly socially isolating in that respect. You know, it's just would really, really like people to pay more attention to what's going on, because you know, I've listened to quite a few of your interviews with other people over the years, including over the past year and what have you, including Duncan and Miranda, and you know. At the end of the day, you may sit in MK Ultra, but as you and Duncan and Miranda have said in the past, everybody on this planet is under some form of mind control. Everybody.
Yes.
So, you know, what does that say about you? That you know, if you're in the truth movement and you're mocking these people, what does that say about you as a person? And what does that say about your level of consciousness and awareness and spiritual awareness? It's just stupid. It's ridiculous.
I have no doubt that there have been plants into what we loosely call the community of truth, and I have no little doubt that they were sent here to discredit. But as I interviewed James Walbert on Wednesday night, who has been implanted with RFID chips, and as he pointed out to me in going through the process, which he's brought federal lawsuits against corporate predators who have chipped him and attempted to stop him. He said, why would anybody do this? Why would you discredit yourself in front of the public and put yourself out there to be mocked and ridiculed in this way? Now, he's not MK Ultra. He was an average person who simply swerved into the gang stalking and gaslighting and all the other activities that are attendant with government agency surveillance and corporate surveillance. So he came at it from a different side, but he was getting the same effects. He was understanding the same things that I've been told by abductees, by ritual abuse victims, and by UFO abductees for many years, that you simply don't do this to yourself as a way to gain glory and get attention. It's really not the best route to that.
No, it's not. No, it's not at all. I would completely agree with that. Completely agree. Which is one of the reasons why I think it can take so long for somebody to come forward. It's one of the things that I feared the most, was that people would ridicule me and people wouldn't believe me, and that the fear of feeling that kind of rejection was just so painful for a long time that I couldn't do anything. When I did start trying to come forward to find some help and a way to find people to talk to, luckily the right doors just tended to open up for me at the right time. I just met the right people in the right place and ended up speaking to Miles Johnston, and through him had contact with some other people, including people such as Cathy Morgan and what have you, and piece by piece, and obviously Duncan and Miranda and some other people as well, and you kind of get the support, and you get people who understand how, what's happened to you and your thoughts and your feelings and your thinking process. But yeah, that it completely trashes your life. Why would you, it's like standing up in the middle of the market square in your local town with a great big banner and going, hi, I'm insane. You just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think anybody in MK Ultra or any of the mind control community is trying to do that at all. All they want is for people to just stand up and take notice, and to pay attention to the research and pay attention to the details that are out there, and if need be, Google this and research it yourself and have a look, because all the evidence is there. Absolutely all the evidence behind mind control is there. For people to turn their nose up at this now is just ridiculous. It's just ludicrous.
Can I interject here real fast?
Yes, please do, Miranda.
I just... sorry, my voice is all scratchy. I haven't talked for a while. I just wanted to say that that's one of the reasons why Duncan and I were so quick when we found out about Sarah coming out. When we saw her interview, someone told us about it. We wanted to get in touch with her as quickly as possible, because we knew what was going to happen. She had just come out with her interview, and we'd kind of been through the gamut of what they did to us, and it's so important to us to support her and support what she's saying and help her get her message out and work with her, partner up with her. We've had so many instances where people who claim to be part of projects just don't work well with others, and it becomes very divisive and very ego-driven and all sorts of things like that. So it's very crucial that we stand together on this, because we don't have a lot of support from the public at large, and that's why we want to protect her and just stand with her, because that needs to happen. We can't just be all separate doing our own thing at this point.
No, definitely. I would definitely agree with that. And it's one of the things that disappointed me a little bit, because there are certain people that seem to kind of enjoy mocking other people's experiences, that say they've been through the programs, and I still to this day struggle to get my head around that, because I just think if you've been through mind control and you've been through this torture and you've been abused in this way for most of your life, where's your empathy? Where's your compassion? Where is it? Why would you kind of mock or laugh at another person's experiences? It just that doesn't hold ground for me at all, in the slightest.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, totally. I can understand that. That you get along with some people and you don't with others, but please, give each other some respect. that's really important, really, really important.
Yeah.
I think what I want to do here, we're at the 1 hour mark. I want to break this file up and then we can continue. And that's the conclusion of the first hour of the interview with Sarah Stanga with my guest Miranda Kelly. You can go to the second hour by going to the audio file under part 2.
This is Off Planet Radio.